This is Boxing Scene's top stories exclusively here on ProBox TV, your boxing channel. I am George DeMatteis. Download the ProBox TV app where apps are available. And part of the beauty of getting the ProBox TV app is listening to the great words from our world champions. We have Chris Algieri and we have Paulie Malignaggi joining us here on Top Stories. Well, famed boxing author Thomas Hauser has written a follow-up column from Canelo Alvarez's victory over Edgar Berlanga that appears to be setting up an upcoming showdown between Alvarez and Saudi Arabia power broker Turkey ALALSHIKH, who sponsored and attended the rival UFC card at the Sphere Saturday across from the Berlanga-Canelo Alvarez events. Now, Hauser writes in the article that you can see on BoxingScene.com, there has been talk that Canelo is slipping, that 66 fights over 19 years have taken a toll. His past 6 fights have gone the distance, but he's still a formidable force. Think of watching a great actor in a play. Not every play that Laurence Olivier starred in was written by William Shakespeare, but Olivier was worth watching to see a great craftsman at work. Hauser also said that it would be nice if the new quote-unquote face of boxing were a little more respectful toward a man who has given his life to the fight game, spent decades in the gym, and actually been punched in the face. All right, Chris, what do you make of the thoughts there and the words of Thomas Hauser?
Listen, I mean, Canelo, well, I'll go with the aging Canelo. Absolutely, he's definitely aging. He's definitely a different guy. But guess what? He's 34. This is father time is real. Certain things in this boxing world really matter. Age matters. Weight classes matter. There's no question about that. And yes, Canelo is a different fighter than he was 4 or 5 years ago. But he's still extremely formidable, extremely entertaining. You're watching someone who has more experience. He's the most experienced fighter in the world today. He's fought more world champions than everyone. He's got more fights than anyone at world-class level. He is a sight to behold. And once he retires, the boxing world is going to miss him. The events that are put on around his fights. Being in Las Vegas, I was there. I've been to many Las Vegas fight weekends for Canelo. They're awesome. The fans come out. It really feels like a big fight every single time. Doesn't matter who he fights. So that's an important aspect of the sport. And I understand where he's coming from when Hauser, that is, when he's talking about Turkey ALVAREZ, because now it seems like they're butting heads. It's basically based on the fact that Canelo Alvarez is like, I don't need you. He threw out a bunch of money, a number that he can make that benefit of his fight. For me, I think Canelo was just trying to see if the big fish would bite. But he didn't, and now it seems that they're butting heads, and Turkey seems to want to go head-to-head with him, sponsoring a UFC event on the same night that Canelo is fighting, even going on record and saying, like, we're going to eat Canelo that night, which didn't happen. Canelo won out on that night, sold out, 20,000. I was there. It was raucous. The whole week was big. Pay-per-view numbers, I don't know if they came out yet, but I'm sure they're good. And I heard that the UFC struggled. So when you go in head-to-head with Canelo Alvarez, he is still the face of the sport, even though a lot of people are trying to say that Turkey ALVAREZ is the face of the sport. Turkey doesn't fight. Turkey is coming in as a promoter. He's making these fantastic cards. He's putting fights together that we would never get, and we should be happy about that. It would be nice to see these two guys work together because I think there's some big opportunities that could come from it. But at the end of the day, I mean, this seems more like a pissing contest to me in terms of who's going to take control of what. Hauser's got some really good points in there, but I think there's more to it than just that. And as far as Canelo is concerned, champ, I think you've always said he's kind of like on his retirement run already, except he's just holding all the belts. But he's in control of his own destiny. And I think he went on record and said, listen, I'm in control of my career at this point. I've earned it. And I'm going to go out or go through it the way that I want to, and it's up to everyone else to judge me. I respected him saying that. He's aware of that, some of these fights that he's choosing, people are not very keen on. But I think looking back, you're going to look back at his record, you're going to look back at what he's done, and he's got a Hall of Fame career, no question.
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways this could go. For starters, yeah, Canelo is the biggest face in boxing. He's the face of boxing, and it's kind of scary when you think about that. After him, there's nobody really stepping into that mantle to where the eyes of the world watch when this person fights. At least in the Americas here, I know in England AJ has that kind of status, even Tyson Fury, but even they are not so young and spring chickens anymore. So when you think about who could overtake the mantle from Canelo, or who could inherit it, before that you had Mayweather, before that you had Oscar De La Hoya, before that you had Ray Leonard and Mike Tyson. It was always somebody who was just carrying the sport into the mainstream with a lot of momentum. And Canelo, it's like almost scary to think like he's maybe that last guy that does it, you know? I don't know if how much he is to blame for this, if maybe he would have gave Benavidez a shot, if Benavidez could step in, could have sort of inherited that and become that guy. I don't know, we'll never know because he didn't fight him. But it's still scary to think that, you know, Canelo, this level of magnitude of a boxing star that we've always had in every generation, there may be a vacuum that's about to be created once Canelo's gone. So in that regard, you have to appreciate his presence. And then, of course, it's debatable about whether the fact that the next generation superstar being unavailable has to do with Canelo's inability to fight the very best opposition at this point. Boxing, as I said in the other news piece, is a bit weird in that it matches names, but it typically likes to match names on the come up against names on the way down. Canelo's career is sort of like that, and a lot of guys' careers like that actually. You know, where you're able to have the pick of the litter because you're so popular. You can fight guys when you want to fight them, as opposed to when the fight is at its best. And that's not just Canelo that does that. That's everybody who's been at a high level tries to do that at times. The exception of Muhammad Ali, who was just out of his mind and fought everybody in their prime, including when he was out of his prime. He still kept fighting guys in their prime. That's why he's the greatest. But so it's a hard standard to uphold, and you know, it's sort of scary. Like I was saying, it's sort of scary when you think that after Canelo, what do we have as far as the guy pushing this into the mainstream? Now, when it comes to Turki ALALSHIKH, it can go two ways here as well, because Canelo is on this retirement tour, and he's supposed to fight David Benavidez. That's the mandatory. That's the guy everybody wants to see him fight. That's the most dangerous guy in his weight class, to the point where Benavidez is getting no help from anybody to get this fight, so he's just moved up in weight. That's not supposed to happen. That's not the way the sport is supposed to work. But Canelo goes and says, well, if Turki ALALSHIKH wants to give me 150 million, 200 million, yeah, then I'll fight him. So you're basically making a jerk-off out of Turki ALALSHIKH by doing that, by saying that. Like, where all of a sudden, the guy you're supposed to fight, the guy you're supposed to hold up your end of the bargain as boxing's face and take on the next biggest star, the next best contender in your weight class, you won't fight him. But if Turki ALALSHIKH will overpay you for this fight to a ridiculous amount, then you'll fight him. It's not how it's supposed to work. I get this is a business, but you're making a fool out of a guy who's basically prides himself on making the best available fights. And I've said plenty of times, I don't even think that's a good fight. That's a fight that's supposed to happen because the belts are on the line, and that's the mandatory. Personally, I don't even think that's a good fight. So it's not worth 150 million, 200 million of Turki ALALSHIKH's money anyway, because Benavidez will go over there and run him over. And that's my take on it until we see the fight, and we're not going to see the fight for that reason. But having said that, there is a reason for Turki to be angry because of that. Because he probably thinks like, oh, this guy's making a fool out of me. What is he demanding this kind of money from me? What is he, out of his mind? What is he, crazy? Like, what am I just here just to throw money away like that? I want to make the best possible fights. So from that regard, I understand Turki ALALSHIKH's discontent. But when you attack the sport of boxing, because Canelo is still our face of boxing, so he still has to be not so much preserved, because you want to see him fight, and you want to see him fight the best, but the image of Canelo represents boxing, so the image of boxing holds on to him. So when you go against Canelo directly, you're going against our major star. And then if you claim to want to help boxing, you're not doing it in the right way. I'll tell you what, if you have the issue with Canelo, fund the next biggest star in boxing. Look to create the next biggest star in boxing. Who is a young phenom that you like that can overtake this mantle, and you can fund him and create the next biggest star in boxing. That way you're helping both boxing and spiting Canelo if you want to do that. Because I get the whole thing you want to spite Canelo, because Canelo shouldn't have said that. You know, that's disrespectful to Turkey as well. But when you do it this way, where I'm just going to go into a new sport. I'm just going to go right into MMA, and I'm going to go head to head with boxing's biggest star. And if he comes crashing down, a lot of boxing holds on to Canelo, and rightfully so, because he's our biggest star. If where Canelo goes, the sport of boxing is held right now. So if you can't say you're going to help boxing and then try to crash Canelo at a moment where boxing is still starving for the next biggest star, you got to try to create the next biggest star. I think that's the way to attack Canelo if you're going to go that way. Otherwise, don't say you're trying to help boxing. Is it more about yourself?
Let's talk about Turki ALALSHIKH a little bit, because now it's starting to come out that he's starting to be a little more adversarial with the journalists and those that don't align with him or don't agree with him, and starting to maybe censor them a little bit there. So what do you make of Turki ALALSHIKH, Chris, and that kind of adversarial relationship that's starting to build, and that that negative, I wouldn't say negativity, but that certainly that confrontational aspect where he may be starting to push people out who don't agree with him and might censor them a little bit.
Yeah, that's a very slippery slope in this sport. You know, we're turning into politics at this point. You know, it's like it's CNN versus Fox News at this point. And who are you going to trust, and is there fake news, and what the narrative is. Trying to control speech is again, a very slippery slope. But people are aware of that. They're going to see that, and it's going to hurt the trustworthiness. Like you were talking about, Champ. Are you really here to help boxing? If that's the case, then doing things like sponsoring a UFC event, going head to head with the star of the sport, not a good look. Talking about potentially banning certain writers and whatnot based on things they say, that's not a good look. And people are aware of that. Our fan base is really small. Boxing is pretty small. So it's a nuanced sport. It's not American football. It's not global soccer. Our fan base is a small group, and the power players it's even smaller. It's a very, very small population. Everyone works with each other. They have to, because there just aren't that many places to go. And the market is what it is. So that's a dangerous thing to do. But again, people are aware of that. We live in a world where everything is exposed. So, and again, Turkey is new to this sport, and I think he's learning on the job. He's been very, very, very smart in the way that he's been able to put together some fantastic cards and making matchups that are important and helpful to the sport. And not only that, but also giving fighters opportunities and paydays that they were never going to see otherwise. So in that regard, what he's been doing has been great. But again, I think he's learning on the job, and that might be something that he might learn from or not. We'll see. But you can't drive such a hard-nosed approach when it comes to boxing, especially when you're a newcomer. You're coming into this sport, and again, he's learning on the job. It's not like he's got 40 years of boxing promotion under his belt, like a Bob Arum say, I think he's got plus 40 years, probably 50, 60 years at this point. Even Eddie Hearn coming from a family background of promotions. So that's something that's, you got to see where he's going to go from there.
Champ. We're going to get the pushback again. We had this discussion yesterday about Canelo. We're going to get the pushback. Okay. The media has no balls. We here have no balls. So I'm going to say it, okay? Canelo's been doing this for years. Turkey, ALALSHIKH, and Canelo have more in common than they even realize. Turkey has more in common with Canelo than they even realize, because Canelo does this all the time. You criticize him, he pulls your credential, and you can't cover the fight. He does all. He's been doing this for years. He did it to me when he fought Rocky Fielding back when I was working at Sky. I mean, this is ages ago. You know what I'm saying? So and there has been fights afterwards that I worked. It's back and forth. But again, it's nip and tuck where, you get mad at this guy, I'm going to pull his credential. Canelo just did this recently. He did it to Juan Manuel Marquez and Eric Morales a couple of fights ago. What are we talking about here? Why weren't we covering that? Did we cover that by any chance? Guys, answer me. Did we cover when Canelo did that to Morales and Marquez and Ricardo Celis and several other of the people in the media?
I don't think we were there for that, no. I mean,
did we cover that? That wasn't that long ago. So we have no balls either. That's the problem. So I'm going to say it.
Yeah, but that
doesn't
make
it
doesn't make it okay.
I don't agree with it, and I didn't agree with it then, and I was complaining about it then, so I complain about it now too. Turkey, ALALSHIKH shouldn't be doing that. The media should have a freedom of the way it reports. The media itself should have the balls to report things, because they walk on eggshells because they want their credentials and they don't cover certain things. They did it with me too when I had my situation with Showtime. So I don't respect them either. But nonetheless, it goes back and forth. This becomes, I don't know, what is it? Totalitarianism. Whoever has the most money has all the control. Is that the kind of world you want to live in? You're on a slippery slope here, bro. You're on a slippery slope. And that's the thing. I think the commissions should have the final say on who gets credentials. If you let the promoters do it and you let the fighters do it, you're going to go down this very slippery slope. This is going to continue to happen, guys. The commissions should be the ones to give credentials. This way, the commission is uniform, there's a governing body, and it works that way. If the promoters and the fighters have the right to give the credentials and pull credentials, you're going down a slippery slope
You're
acting
like the commissions are bulletproof.
They're not, but
they
it's
can be
better
corrupt
than this.
as well. I don't think it will, until we have a unified commission where we actually have some teeth and some you're talking about balls, having some balls to actually do something. None of this is going to change. But this kind of censorship can't happen. It can't happen.
You rather the fighters and promoters have? You rather the fighters and promoters have?
I'm not saying that. No. I said until we have an overall commission that can actually oversee this and do it the right way.
In the meantime, I'd rather the commission, though. It's better than this.
Yeah, well.
All right, there you have it there. By the way, you definitely want to check out the full article of Thomas Hauser. It's called Canelo Alvarez and Turkey ALALSHIKH on BoxingScene.com. It was published on Monday. It's definitely a great must read. All right, great stuff from Paulie Malignaggi and Chris Algieri here on Top Stories. And we'd like to remind you, scan the QR code, download the ProBox TV app where apps are available, and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Best live fight series in all of boxing continues October 9th here on your boxing channel, Wednesday Night Fights. I'm George DeMatteis, and this is Boxing Scene's Top Stories.
Wednesday Night Fights.
Dynamite action on Wednesday Night Fights every other Wednesday on your boxing channel.
Coming up on your next Wednesday Night Fights, October 9th. Chris, Primetime Colbert, and Omar Super Salcido step into the ring for what is sure to be a barn burner. Live from the ProBox Event Center in Plant City. Get your tickets at ProBoxTV.com or take your chances at the door. Wednesday Night Fights.
For more ProBox TV, scan the QR code on the screen or go to the App Store and Google Play. ProBox TV, your boxing channel.